Good morning students. The topic of today's module is Eradication of Hunger. India's population in 1951 was 361 million and the growth rate was 1.3% per annum. But in 1961, the population rose to 439 million and the growth rate was 2.16% per annum. In 1981, it rose to 683 million with a growth rate of 2.46%, and in 1991 it was 843 million with growth rate of 2.38%. In 2001, 1027 million with a growth rate of 2.13%. The exponential growth rate of population as mentioned by the data sheet of SCAP was 1.5% per annum in 2002. The rural population in 1991 was 629 million and the urban population was 218 million. Thus, the percentage of rural population was 74.3 and that of the urban is 25.7. However, the urban population of India in 2004 rose to 29% and the rural population was 71%. It will thus be seen that nearly 3/4 of the population lives in rural India. The production of total food grains in the country in 1999 to 2000 was 209 million tons and it works out to about 600 grams per person per day. Theoretically, half a kilogram food if made available to each individual is inadequate. Moreover, the availability of food to an individual depends on the purchasing power of the persons concerned. Otherwise, it will lead to undernutrition, malnutrition and hunger. So, the quantitative inadequacy of the diet is known as undernutrition or hunger, while that arising from deficiency of one or more essential nutrients is called as malnutrition. One of the great unsung global achievements of the second half of this 20th century has been the world's extraordinary success in raising global food production. While the global population has doubled to over 6 billion people in less than 50 years, average per capita food consumption has risen from about 2350 to 2800 kilocalories per day, with the fastest increase in both food output and consumption occurring in developing countries. In spite of this achievement, the number of people without enough to eat on a regular basis remain stubbornly high at over 800 million and is not falling significantly. Over 60% of the world's undernourished people live in Asia and a quarter in Africa. The proportion of people who are hungry, however, is greater in Africa than Asia. The latest FAO figures indicate that there are 22 countries, 16 of which are in Africa, in which the undernourishment prevalence rate is over 35%. Much of the global growth in food production has come from small scale farmers, especially in Asia. Even, however, in those countries such as India and China, which have been most successful in raising smallholder output and reducing poverty, many millions of people, both rural and urban, continue to be chronically undernourished. In these countries, the gap between poor and rich is widening and hunger is a symptom of economic exclusion. The disturbingly slow rate of progress in reducing the number of undernourished persons worldwide suggests that the measures now being taken to cut hunger are either not right ones or that they are simply not being applied sufficiently, boldly and on a large enough scale to have a significant impact. Coming to nutrition and composition of diets. The existing pattern of food intake and nutrition in different parts of India have been extensively studied through the periodical surveys carried out by ICMR, Nutritional Unit of Health Directorates of state governments and national sample surveys. Although the figures for different states are crude averages, general characteristics of Indian diets, namely the preponderance of cereals, markedly low intake of protective foods and regional variation in staple foods such as rice, they do indicate the pattern of consumption of various foods by a large section of the population. The salient features are given below. The intake of cereals is largely inadequate. The intake of all other foods is unsatisfactory, particularly pulses, vegetables, milk. The intake of fats and oils is also slow. The calorie intake in most of the states except Punjab, Haryana, coastal parts of Andhra Pradesh is low. The intake of protein is adequate in most of the states with marginal defects in Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Orissa. There is not much variety in the consumption of cereals. Coming to level of hunger in India. Indian diet mainly consists of cereals and pulses. Cereals and pulses contribute on an average over 75% of the calorie supply, 85% of protein supply, most of thiamine and 70% of iron, some 30% of fat, 40% of calcium, 15% of vitamin A, 50% of riboflavin and a negligible proportion of vitamin C and D. The major difficulty with India is the low purchasing power, particularly among small farmers, sharecroppers, landless labourers and artisans. In the cities, a large number of people engaged in petty business are poor and have low purchasing power, with the result that their diet does not provide adequate calories and the diet is almost devoid of fruits and vegetables and animal products, particularly milk, butter and cheese. This leads to undernutrition, hunger, emaciated body, low productivity, ill health and deficiency diseases. Owing to protein deficiency, diseases like edema, anemia among children below 5 years of age is common. Anemia is also common among women of childbearing age. The deficiency of iodine results in goiter and that of B1, that is thiamine, causes beriberi. Eye infection and skin disorders are caused by the deficiency of vitamin A. It may therefore be summed up that people who are below the poverty line suffer from undernutrition and malnutrition. Hunger can be eliminated by increasing the purchasing power of the people. The government of India is making serious efforts in this direction. A recent effort is the promulgation of a scheme of providing job to the poor by allocating rupees 100 billion through PM's full rural employment scheme. Nearly 1000 million man employment shall be generated through this scheme and go a long way in eradicating hunger. The new UPA federal government wishes to spend 300 billion rupees to provide employment to one member from each rural household, which will alleviate poverty, increasing the purchasing power and mitigate hunger. Next is the food security. India has taken positive steps to ensure food security in times of drought. There was a time before independence when in Bengal there was a famine and millions died owing to non-availability of food grains. In 2001 to 2002, India faced drought conditions, but with a huge buffer stock of food grains, the situation was under control. A clarification should be made between food availability and food security. If people have the purchasing power and if food grains is available in market, they can purchase it, or the government can promulgate schemes like food for work and people have a sense of food security. It would therefore be worthwhile to examine steps which India has taken to ensure food security. There are a number of steps which have been taken to promote food security in India. These are introduction of new agricultural technology to increase food production, establishment of prices and cost commission to announce the prices of various food grains, pulses and sugar cane per quintal before sowing season to strengthen the farming community, procurement policy of food grain and payment to farmers on the spot, maintenance of a huge buffer of food grains so that food grains could be rushed any part of the country where there is a drought, availability of food grains through more than 4,000 fair price shops and making the food grains available at subsidized price to the poorest of the poor. Buffer stock as a factor of food security. Buffer stock helps in meeting emergencies like droughts, failure of crops and provides food grains for public distribution system. It will be seen from table that the actual stock with a FCI is much higher than the norm. It helped to maintain food security and fight the drought of 2002. For example, in 2002 to 2003, under the Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana, 5.47 million tons of food grains were spent in the midday meal, 1.5 million tons of food for work, 0.11 million tons in the World Food Programme. A total of 7.46 million tons of food grains were spent to provide relief to the drought affected states. There are compelling moral arguments for eradicating hunger. However, these seem to carry little weight in resource allocation decisions, whether within the budgets of developing countries or in aid allocations. Instead, economic and political considerations tend to dominate in decisions on the use of fiscal resources. One of the main reasons for insufficient direct action against hunger may be the widespread assumption among policy makers that hunger is a consequence of poverty. Coming to food aid program in India. India has found a novel way of food grain program. It has established a network of fair price shops for public distribution system. The basic philosophy is that the availability of food grains is not a sufficient condition to ensure food security to the poor. It is also necessary to have purchasing power to buy food. The capacity of the poor to buy food can be increased in two ways: by raising their income and by supplying food grains at subsidized prices. There are many employment generating programs that take care of enhancement of the income of the people. The PDS is the mechanism for the second solution. There are 4,000 fair price shops that sell commodities at subsidized rates worth more than 300 billion rupees annually to 160 million families. On an average, if there are 4 in a family, the food grain is sold at subsidized rates much below the price prevailing in the open markets to about 640 million people. This is more than half of the total population of the country. The PDS is perhaps the largest network of food aid in the world. Food in the fair price shop is sold at subsidized rates. The annual subsidy involved in maintaining the system in 2002 to 2003 has been 212 billion rupees. It would be interesting to note how this subsidy has been increasing over the years. The per capita food subsidy expenditure by the government in 2002 to 2003 is estimated at around rupees 200. In the public distribution system, some useful changes have been made, as it was pointed out that the population benefiting from the PDS should be divided into two classes, that is, those that are below the poverty line and above the poverty line. People below the poverty line are issued special cards and food grains are sold to people below the poverty line at specially subsidized prices since June 1997. This has been designated as Targeted Public Distribution System. BPL families increased to 65.2 million against 59.5 million when the TPDS was introduced. The allocation of food grains for BPL increased to 14.7 billion tons per annum. The BPL allocation of food grains was increased from 20 kg to 25 kg per family per month with effect from 2001 and to 35 kg with effect from 2002. It was sold at rupees 4.15 per kg of wheat and rupees 5.65 per kg for rice and has been reduced to rupees 2 per kg for wheat and rupees 3 per kg for rice. The identification of the poor is done by the state. The emphasis is on including only the really poor and the vulnerable sections of the society, such as landless agricultural laborers, marginal farmers, artisans or craftsmen, potters, weavers, blacksmiths and carpenters in the rural areas and slum dwellers, daily wagers, rickshaw pullers, handcart pullers and fruit and flower sellers on the pavement in the urban areas. Next is the international support. The concept that hunger eradication is a shared responsibility for all nations is central to the WFS and Millennium Development Goals process. In line with this, a situation must be created in which low income developing countries which show their determination to achieve the WFS goal can feel confident that they will able to call successfully on international technical and financial support as needed to complement their own resource communities. One of the major tasks facing the International Alliance Against Hunger, created in 2003, is to put this concept of reciprocal responsibility into practice. As food security programs are scaled up, FAO must deliberately assume a less dominant role than in pilot phase SPFS projects, leaving ample space for national ownership and effective partnerships to emerge. FAO can catalyze the process through offering to assist in advocacy for emergence of national alliances against hunger, in assessing the nature, extent and location of hunger, in helping to prepare strategic plans for hunger reduction, and assisting in national food security program design, engaging partners including through South-South cooperation, training and building institutional capacities for program implementations, and networking between programs. There is a danger of underestimating the difficulties of setting up and implementing large scale national food security programs, and indeed they are formidable, not least because of the need to motivate all the key players, many of whom have to live and work under very difficult conditions. To the extent, however, the leader succeed in having the goal of getting rid of hunger accepted as a national challenge involving everyone and not just the state, the chances of success increase greatly. Boldness is the quest for an end to hunger is well justified, given the lifelong damage it inflicts on millions of fellow humans, even if results may sometimes fall short of expectations. Thus, there is a need to control population growth, increase agricultural production by increasing the yield per hectare, the system of food grains, and increase the purchasing power of the people. This may improve the diet of the people and reduce undernutrition and hunger.